Well, I think it's time for us to start this seminar about job cultures, and we're going to share some skills together with our three panelists whom are here now attending, but also one panelist who sent her film about her work. My name is Hediye Güzel. I'm a press manager of the trade union Vision in Sweden. It's the fifth biggest trade union in Sweden. And I have a background working with political influence, human rights, gender equality, and also about discrimination and the job market or the inclusion, the questions of inclusion. And we will be together right now, but first, before we introduce our panelists, let's start with this very important seminar, which earlier you got the introduction, but I would like to say that this is a joint organization, the Cultural Migration Conference, and it's organized by the French Institute in Sweden, the Goethe Institut in Sweden as well, and the Mångkulturellt centrum in the municipality of Botkyrka. And there's 3 seminars, roundtables today, and this is the second one, and the next will come after this one. And the main target with this seminar, with this roundtable, is that we are going to discuss together how we can help the newcomers to enter the job market, but also how they get access to different places in their new country or the country they have moved to, migrated to. And the role of trade unions, which I represent, but also of the universities, the civic society, like their roles in the professional integration. How can they contribute to the integration of people moving around different countries? Because we can see today in several European countries, it's a big job segregation in our societies, unfortunately, and there's also matters or issues of discrimination, and that's why we're gathered here today to talk about it. And we have 2 of our panelists who have their own migration story, but also how they did when they got to their new country. And I'm myself a child of, or it's what's called a second generation immigrant. I was born in Sweden, but my parents migrated to Sweden in the 1960s. So I'm struggling with being between 2 identities all the time, but it's not compared to what maybe one of our panelists, Chérine Ali or Omar Al Zankah, has experienced. So I would like to let them now to enlighten their story, and we are going to France now and starting with Chérine Ali. Welcome, Chérine.
Thank you all for being here. So I'm Chérine Ali. I am a Syrian refugee. I've been in France since October 2015. Before in Syria, I did my studies in civil engineering. I started a master in hydraulic engineering. I had to leave before finish it. Also, I worked several years during the war in the humanitarian field, in building peace, empower women, and create safe spaces for displaced children. So I came in France in 2015. I did my I did my papers as a refugee, and learned the language and have a master's degree in sustainable engineering from the National Schools of Engineers in Saint-Étienne in France. In 2018, I was a fellow of a program. It calls T4 Women Fellowship with the Techfugees. Techfugees is an international organization that I work now for, supporting the inclusion and rights of displaced persons through the development of tech solutions designed by, with, and for refugees. So with an online community of 56,000 followers and 4,000 active volunteers and partners, Techfugees is a growing community of qualified professionals in the tech supporting refugees across the world. I want to talk you more about the fellowship because it helped me a lot. It's a program dedicated for refugee women to find a job exclusively in the tech sector. It contains many pillars. So it's a mentorship-led program. Every fellow is matched with a personalized mentor and trainer in order to support her job search and find a job in the tech sector. Also, it's a removing barriers. The program is totally free for each fellow, and sponsorship from our corporates help us to cover all the costs associated to the job search. So we took care of the access to training and going to job interviews. We cover the cost of babysitting, transportation, access to reliable internet, psychological support, and lending computers when it's needed. Also, the fellowship works on strengthening the social and the technical capital for each fellow. The program includes weekly training and mentoring sessions, social events, networking, job dating, in order to grow the professional network for each fellow. Also, it has professional French courses, languages with a linguistic tandem, also volunteer, and French courses during the summer, certification from the Alliance Française in order to overcome the barrier of language. The program also includes a job, one-day job shadowing, a day it's like to discover how it looks like the daily life of a professional in the targeted professional sector. The program until now helped refugees to land 80% of our participants land a job in the tech sector. Or me, as an example, in the organization, I come back to my old job. So why we created? Because in the EU, almost 60% of employed refugees are overqualified for the job they occupy. Also, refugee women are 8 times more likely to be unemployed compared to men. At the same time, the tech sector is open to recruit talented profiles and diverse profiles regardless of the passport and the academic background. That's why we are specialized in the tech sector.
Now we are moving northward and to Omar Al Zankah in Sweden. Welcome, Omar.
Thanks. Thank you for having me and invite me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Omar. You have heard about that. I moved from Syria in 2012 because the Syrian revolution started in 2011, and that's why usually young men flee, because there is a law in Syria says when you are 18 you have to join the army and fight. And the fight was unfair fight. It was against the citizens, which one party want to stay in power, and it already has been in power for 50 years. So that's why, like, shortly, one of the main reasons why I moved from Syria. In 2012, I moved to Jordan, and my idea was to go forward to Dubai or Saudi Arabia, to cousins and friends that we have other connections there. But all these countries, just like European Union, made it impossible to get a visa. So that's why we are fleeing illegally. If someone wondering why people came just like this, that way, that as an immigrant or refugee. So I moved forward after I spent 3.5 years in Jordan. I had different jobs in Jordan. My plan was just to stay for a few months, but I stayed more than I was expecting. It has been almost 9 years now, living my home. I moved forward to Turkey, then Greece, and then Switzerland, and then to Sweden. I ended up in the north in Jämtland, where I met bears and reindeers. So I lived in a refugee camp, just like everyone else who came as a refugee to Sweden. And I spent the first year as a refugee, and I had no social number, which was the reason to not be able to go even to school or learn the language, even though I wanted hard to learn the language, to be integrated and participate to the society I'm in. So I taught myself English by myself on the internet. And then I got my social security number. I moved to Stockholm and I started having jobs. One of the first jobs I had, I mean, a serious job, was with an app. It's called Welcome app. The main idea of the app is to get newcomers and Swedes to get to know each other. And I was just a user who saw a flyer in the refugee house says, use this app and you will get friends. So I started as a user, then I met the founders and I start to work with them. And since then I start to use my social entrepreneurship to make it easier for newcomers just like me. So we start to make cooperation with the huge Swedish companies to get their employees to use the app, to get to know newcomers. And then I moved forward to World Trade Center in Stockholm, and I started to work with a huge company. It's called Lernia. It's owned by the state, Swedish government. And I worked as well with an app. It's called Join. In Swedish, jobb och integration i näringslivet, which is mean job and integration in the business life. And in that app, we try to put all the information that a newcomer need about both social life or business life in Sweden. Then I moved forward and I started to work with a theater and as a project leader, and I started to do mainly courses, theater courses. And it was a nice thing to do, to see how people treat their trauma through theater by, having them to be encouraged to express themselves, to use their fantasy and talk about their trauma. I had many jobs after that. I started to create films. I have been a main character for a short campaign film for Google. They tried to make a commercial about an app that helping immigrants, which was Welcome app. And then I started to create films for Frihuset and films by my own. And I usually talk about newcomers' experience and issues facing us in order to be integrated in Sweden. Then I worked as a community manager in co-working spaces in Stockholm. So I was mainly responsible for cooperation and networking between all the members of our co-working spaces. And then I worked in a housing company, one of the biggest in Stockholm, owned by the city as well. And the majority of the tenants that I worked with were immigrants or have immigrant background. So that's me shortly.
And now we are going to have a little film from Véronique Simon. And Véronique is from University of Uppsala, and she's also working with the refugees. Welcome. So let's see what Véronique wants to share with us today. She's an associate professor, so she's working a lot with the linguistic issues as well.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Véronique Simon, je travaille à l'Université d'Uppsala. Je voulais vous remercier de m'accueillir ici pour cette Nuit des idées 2021 et la table ronde culture et travail. I will now switch into English and talk a little bit about my different hats and perspectives. I live in Sweden since 1987, and I'm an associate professor in language didactics with focus on multilingualism and inclusion of new arrivals in the Swedish school system at Uppsala University. And I am also an activist since many years, dealing with questions regarding refugees, education against racism, working together with NGOs both in Sweden and also in France. I'm going now to talk about inclusive school in Sweden versus inhuman migrations policy, well, at least according to me. We'll start with the good sides and the fact that underage applicants for a residence permit, including asylum seekers or stateless children, have the right to education in preschool or in school. For young people who want to attend the upper secondary school, well, they have to do it before they turn 18. The situation for adults is a bit different. if you have a permit to stay, you have the right to study Swedish, and you may even get paid for that. But if you're still waiting for a decision, which may take several years, then you will have to rely on voluntary organizations, on the civil society, on goodwill. You could say that the past years, the migration policies have been hardened, and this has, I think, disastrous consequences on education and then access to employment, of which I will give you a few examples. So this is not an easy waltz. Let's take work and housing. It's difficult to study or work when housing conditions are bad, which very often is the case, or when authorities make you move from one city to the other one. Women often stay at home, and I would also like to mention that unaccompanied minors, especially those from Afghanistan, are a very fragile group. They go to school, they want to stay in Sweden, but there is a contract between the Swedish government and Afghanistan, some kind of returnee programs. So many of them are afraid to get deported, and some of them are. I want also to mention the gymnasielagen, which says that if you complete upper secondary school and within 6 months, which is a very short period, can find a long-term employment, then you may obtain a temporary permit to stay, which is difficult because of discrimination. And I think my colleagues will take up this question, but also even worse now during the pandemic. Let's now talk about two different stories, a success story and a nightmare story. The first one, that's a Syrian family, parents and 4 children. They arrived in 2017, and they very quickly, which is surprising, got a resident permit, which opens many doors, every doors, and a decent flat in the city center. The man was a businessman and the woman a teacher of English. They were able to enroll the fast track, an educational program to adapt and complete their skills. All children go to school and speak Swedish fluently. They have also been lucky enough to get help from a couple of Swedish families, which helped, of course, with inclusion. And now the nightmare. We're talking about a family from Palestine, parents, 5 children, 3 are now over 18. They are paperless, they are stateless. They arrived in Sweden 11 years ago, and the youngest child is born in Sweden. Their application for asylum has been rejected many times, but as they do not have any papers, they cannot be deported. All children are or have been in school, and they are fluent in Swedish. Well, those, they have no rights except that of going to school. No adult family member has any Swedish identification number. The father and the elder son work. I won't tell you what they do or where. And the mother is at home and still doesn't speak so much Swedish. The 2 daughters are also working, one of them as a trainee through her school, but they were never able to open any bank account where to receive their salary. Without a permit to stay or identification number, none of the children have the right to access higher education, which is a dream for at least 3 of them. And last but not least, and this is very sad, the new Swedish law about the UN's Convention on the Rights of the Child cannot be applied for the children in this family. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this roundtable. I represent the municipality of Botkyrka, as Hediye told, and we are both actually, we grew up in Botkyrka, both of us, but as Hediye told different stories, we have a very different story, but different stories from Chérine and Omar, but immigrant background. Botkyrka is the most ethnic diverse municipality in the whole Sweden. We are about 94,000, soon 95, growing all the time, inhabitants. 58% of all the inhabitants have immigrant background and history, a family history of migration. Like Hediye, my father came to Sweden, Hediye's parents came to Sweden in the 60s, 60 years of migration. If you understand, we are like first, second, third, and even fourth generation Swedes with a family history that starts somewhere else. And I think that's why we handle these questions maybe in another way than many other municipalities in Sweden. It's also important to say that the majority of all the children in Botkyrka, if you think that 58% have immigrant background, 87.5% of all the children in Botkyrka are born in Sweden. And we have inhabitants from 163 parts of the world or countries, and we speak around 100 languages. This is why we always have had a strong political commitment to handle, to progress in a diverse municipality. And this ambition has been, from both left parties and right, between all the parties in between that want to handle this in a progressive way. So we have a lot of been working. We have until this day, because you never know, tomorrow is another day. The world is so strange sometimes, but until this day, we have had a strong infrastructure to handle this, not as a welcoming of newcomers, but also building a society that's characterized by diversity, etc. We want the politicians from the left to the right, from the right to the left, know what conditions they want to see in our municipality in 30 years. And this is important, I think, the long-term view. And this means that we see, and the politicians also see, and the public administration, the civil servants, that we at public administration need to be able to carry what we call an intercultural refugee reception.
I would like to return to Chérine and to Omar as well. In the former seminar roundtable, one of the panelists said that we're not having a migration crisis, we're having a welcoming crisis. Mm-hmm. And I think that he really got a point there. Mm-hmm. I met an engineer from Syria a couple of months ago, and he was really sad and sorry about his contact with the Swedish Migration Authority. He said, well, in my interview, I sat there about 45 minutes. They never asked any questions about who am I, how can I contribute to my new country. They only talk about all the things that they were going to help me or give to me, but former information, but nothing about who are you, what can you contribute, what would you like to do in your new country. Omar, I know, for example, that you have some kind of success history of learning Swedish in 40 days, but Chérine, also that you are working with women empowerment. Did you felt anything from this welcoming crisis from 2015 when a lot of people had to flee from Syria?
In fact, when I just arrived, I needed the help that the government gave me. The food, the housing, the legal paper, the legal stay permits to stay in France. But after that, I felt, or I don't feel it's a reality, the system is not designed to help us. Because everything I did it by myself. Even the master, I didn't have any help. So when I always went to the job center, because I never thought it would take me 5 years to get a job. So I stayed 5 years without getting a job. So I guess my competence were degraded a lot. When I went to the job center to help me, they said, but you have a master's degree. I told them, yes, I have a master's degree, but I am different. I am not. They tried to treat me like I'm a French citizen, but I'm not a French. I didn't have the same education. We don't have the same education system also. So yeah, I had these difficulties, and without refugees, maybe I couldn't have a job, because during the fellowship they get to know me and to evaluate my competences. But I always said to myself and to anyone around me, I need someone to know how much I can work, how much I can provide to the job. But when I applied to a job with the French companies, I didn't receive any answer, because I know for my CV will be weak, because I have a degree in Syria and I work in the different field than my studies. So, but TechFugees saw this, because so means they saw how much I can work. So they give me these opportunities, but without getting to know anyone, I will never have a job. So I guess the system is not designed to help us. Even the job center, it's designed to help unemployed local person, not us.
Thank you. Omar, as I told before, you said that you've lost everything in Syria and now you have to rebuild it, and you're from Syria to Sweden, you had to pass several countries. Yeah. And yet you came to Sweden, which together with Germany, I think it's those two countries in Europe who how do you say? Yeah, exactly, of the immigrants from Syria mostly in 2015. Tell us about the things you felt of this welcoming crisis.
I mean, firstly, I think that people were afraid because of the media in general. Just like, for example, now coronavirus, so many conspiracy theories, so many misinformation, wrong facts. And when I think in general, people were afraid because especially the government usually place people in small villages. So they place, for example, in a small village that has, for example, 200 people in it. They used to place, for example, 300 refugees in the same refugee house. So it was easy to be we and them. It's pretty easy. They speak a language, we speak another. They think this, they don't think the same. We have another ideas. So that was the first obstacle, I would like to say. And when it's too many people coming and you asking the same question always, where you came from, why you are here, you are applying for asylum. So it's easier to have that mindset that we gonna help these people and these people can't help or contribute. And it's easy for you as an immigrant when you receive that question and you heard before that someone else received the same question, that you will have the same mindset that I will receive help, I can't contribute. So the special thing with me, I think that I wasn't having that mindset. I just like tried things. So that was, I mean, the biggest issue. We're gonna help. I mean, you will be treated as a patient and you're gonna meet a doctor. That mindset. For example, you would be asked where you came from, why you are here, you are applying for asylum. But I never received the question what you can contribute with. I can translate films. I can work with websites. I can do many things. I'm not just, as I said, it's a stereotype was about all the immigrants. And I was saying that, okay, we live in Sweden. I was living in Jämtland, but the people who are living in Jämtland, they don't have the same daily life if we compare it with someone who is a Swede and live in Stockholm. They came from the same country, but they have two different daily lives and they have two different ideologies maybe. So that was the biggest issue for me, that the people's mindset. I was trying to change the mindset of the one who is meeting me, and I'm trying to explain that I can contribute, not only receiving help. I mean, the biggest issue was the cultural things, because people already have an image or a stereotype, as I said, in their heads about us as immigrants, because the media usually, especially 2015, it's all reports about mass refugees moving, ISIS. So people were afraid, and everyone was taking a step backward because they think that we are coming from two totally different cultures. But I used to say that I was in Syria playing PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 and listening to 50 Cent and Eminem. I had like the same life as any teenager around the world. And I was seeing myself as a world citizen, because I don't think it's a huge differences. Yeah, there is social codes, there is many differences in us, but not that huge. That was considered a big obstacle for me.
I think it's the mindset. That's the intercultural mindset, is that, you know, every person on this earth have needs, but also resources. And if you come from a war, of course, you will have other needs than a person that doesn't have that experience. But to see that people have resources, and it depends on the if you have a trauma, or I don't know, sadness or anything. But in beneath all this, we see people as resources. That's very important. There's also the dignity part. I think the multicultural way of seeing things was good, because you said that you have an identity, and you have the right to have that identity. So it was not completely wrong, but it was closed down to it's part of why we have this segregation, because we don't see people as individuals. And I think it's the only way. And I think it's easier to start at the local level, because it's easy to see how you need to do things differently.
But the job, it's a problem for most refugees. It's not just for women, but it's more difficult for women. So it means a lot to me, because I lived, without living this experience, maybe I will never understand what these refugee women are going through. But since I am 5 years without a job, I can understand concretely what they are doing. I can share with them the experience, to not feel downgraded, to not underestimate ourselves. It's not because for 3 years or more than 4 years, I always thought it was my fault. I am not good enough to work in France, but it was not true. At the end, I decided, no, I deserve an opportunities, but the system is not designed for me. It's not my fault. So and especially for women, it's really important that, I don't know, I don't want to speak about on behalf of the men, but it's really important for me, for my self-esteem, to have a job.
But I know that my mother also said that it was much bigger for her to have this job than for my father. So when they get their first salary at the same time, you should have seen, or I didn't see because I wasn't born, but my mother told me about how proud she was to get this, to feel that she's doing something which would never be possible maybe for her back in the Kurdish village in Turkey. So it's really important to have a job and to feel that you're going to start your integration journey in the new country.
When I worked with the Welcome app, for example, we read a book. It says that you're gonna have to spend 10,000 hours to be good at something. So we thought that Sweden has to be good at integration. So we made the campaign, it's called 10,000 lunches before the election, 2018. And we try to encourage everyone to take a lunch just with an immigrant, to change the mindset or the idea or the stereotype that almost everyone had. And party leaders participated, companies, and it made some change. I can put it this way, my network is my CV. That's it. I never used my CV to get a job in Sweden. I always received a job because
by your contacts.
By my contacts, someone recommended me. And that's why I ended up here. Someone saw me at the festival and now I'm here. Network.
Yeah.
And especially with Swedes, those who are integrated or already part of society, because you will be just like those you hang out with. If you hang out with immigrants are not integrated in Sweden yet, they don't have job, they speak your own language, your mother tongue, it will be easy for you to speak your mother tongue all the time and never learn the language. And it's especially important to learn the social codes as well, both in social life and business life. How does it work? Is it email? Is it contract? Is it, and so on.
So it's really important that we all make the network bigger.
The pandemic has negative effects. We cannot communicate physically. We have to be apart, but also has opened new doors, like this webinar. Maybe I couldn't, because I have 2 conferences to attend, and so without with this we depend a lot on the internet. We use these services. So also with beneficiaries, with a partner, with any other to any collaborates, we depend on the internet. It's not enough, but it's a solution.
Everyone should network more to help out.
So let us maybe share more our experience work together to find a solution, because it will get benefit for all of us. And thank you.
Don't get depressed and try to use your setups and things you have been through to learn, because that's what I've done. And I use things that I have been through, or the negative things, to find solution for others.
I would say step out of your comfort zone, be generous. If some solutions are quick and some take long time, but the more we are doing this, the sooner we will get to a better point. So
thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thank you.